The stars stretched endlessly outside the cockpit, a glittering ocean of cold light. Mara's fingers hovered over the controls, tense and alert. She had been alone in deep space for weeks, transporting cargo between distant colonies. But today, something felt wrong. The sensors flickered with a strange signal, one she could not identify. It pulsed faintly like a heartbeat she could not see. Suddenly, a sharp alarm rang through the cabin. Lights flashed red and the ship shook violently. Mara slammed her hands on the controls, struggling to keep the vessel steady. On the main screen, a massive shadow loomed, an alien warship far larger than anything humanity had ever built. Its hull shimmered with an energy she could not understand. Before she could react, a beam of energy struck her cargo bay. Containers exploded and the shockwave threw her into the seat. The warning light screamed around her as she fought to stabilize the ship. Her heart pounded, but she refused to give in to panic. Humans were not built to run from danger. They were built to face it and survive. The alien ship fired again, closer this time. Mara pushed the engines to maximum, weaving through the asteroid field that crowded this region of space. She felt the ship groan under stress, metal straining against her desperate maneuvers. Every instinct screamed at her to escape, but she knew this was only delaying the inevitable. The alien was faster, stronger, and clearly more experienced. Then, without warning, the alien vessel's grappling beam latched onto her hull. The ship shuddered violently, alarms blaring as the human pilot struggled to shake it free. Panels sparked, and Mara felt a rush of fear she could not hide. But fear was fuel for those who knew how to survive. She twisted, jerked, and yanked the controls, using every trick she had learned in years of piloting. The ship creaked, metal screeching, but she could not break free. A shadow appeared in the viewport. Mara's breath caught. The alien had boarded her ship. She had never seen one in person, only in brief reconnaissance footage from deep space encounters. It was taller than any human, with sleek armor that shimmered like liquid metal. Its eyes glowed faintly, intelligent and calculating. There was no hesitation in its movements, only a single deadly purpose. Mara reached for her sidearm, her fingers tightening on the grip. She did not know what this creature wanted, but she would not surrender. Humans had survived impossible odds before, and she intended to do so again. She ducked behind the console as the alien stepped inside the cargo bay, moving with a grace that was both terrifying and fascinating. It scanned the room, its glowing eyes sweeping over every detail. Then it lunged. Mara rolled to the side, firing her weapon. The shots rang out, sparks flying as they struck the alien's armor. The creature barely flinched, its movements precise and controlled. Mara realized with a chill that she was fighting a being designed for war, trained in ways no human had ever imagined. Yet she refused to give up. She moved quickly, using the ship's narrow corridors to her advantage, ducking, weaving, and striking when she could. The battle raged for what felt like hours, though in reality, it was only minutes. Mara's body ached, her breath came in ragged gasps, but she never stopped. Every human instinct, creativity, courage, determination pushed her forward. She used the ship itself as a weapon, triggering doors and releasing panels to slow the alien's advance. Each move showed her intelligence, her ability to adapt under impossible pressure. Finally, in a desperate gamble, Mara led the alien toward the escape pod bay. She activated the launch sequence, hoping the small compartment would hold both of them temporarily. The alien hesitated, studying her with those glowing eyes. It seemed to understand her plan, yet it moved anyway. The pod launched violently into space, spinning, tossing them both inside. For a moment, there was silence. Mara's chest heaved, sweat dripping from her forehead. She stared at the alien, who now sat across from her, equally battered but unbroken. It looked at her with a strange expression, curiosity perhaps, or a recognition of her courage. Mara did not lower her weapon, not yet. She could not trust it, not until she understood what it was and why it had come for her. The pod drifted through the void, carrying them both away from the destroyed cargo ship. Mara's mind raced. How had this creature found her? Why had it attacked with such precision? And most importantly, how would she survive the days ahead with a being more powerful than any human she had ever faced? Even in the face of this unimaginable threat, one thing was clear. She would not give up. Humans were strong in ways the galaxy had not yet seen. She had courage, intelligence, and the will to fight. And as she glared at the alien across from her, she understood that this encounter was only the beginning of something far larger, far more dangerous, and far more extraordinary than she could ever have imagined. The stars outside the pod were silent, cold, and infinite. But inside, Mara's human spirit burned bright, refusing to be extinguished. The escape pod shuddered as it hurtled through the darkness of space, spinning slowly away from the wreckage of Mara's cargo ship. Inside, Mara's chest ached from the fight, her hands trembling slightly, but her mind was sharper than ever. Across from her, the alien warrior, Kor, remained still, watching her with eyes that glowed faintly in the dim pod light. Neither spoke at first. Words felt unnecessary. Their silence carried a mixture of tension, exhaustion, and a strange recognition of each other's strength. Suddenly, the pod lurched violently. Alarm screamed as Mara struggled to regain control. Through the small viewport, she saw a planet rising ahead. Its surface swirled with storms and jagged mountains. The pod was descending too quickly, and Mara realized with a jolt that they would not land gently. She gritted her teeth, gripping the controls and bracing herself. Humans were survivors. Even if the odds were impossible, she refused to surrender. The pod slammed into the planet's surface with a violent crash. Metal twisted and sparks flew. Mara was thrown against the wall, her vision blurred, but she forced herself to stand. Kor groaned beside her, his armor dented and scratched. He moved with deliberate care, assessing the damage to both the pod and himself. He was powerful, deadly, and disciplined, yet even he had been caught in the chaos of survival. The pod's door creaked open, and a gust of cold, heavy wind blew inside. Mara stepped out first, scanning the alien landscape. The planet was harsh and unforgiving. Sharp rocks jutted from the ground, and distant storms rolled across the horizon, painting the sky in dark shades of gray. The air was thin and difficult to breathe, but it was breathable, just barely. Mara inhaled deeply, letting herself adjust. She had been on many planets, but none like this. Every instinct screamed danger. Kor followed her, moving silently and carefully. He examined the area with precision, noting every shadow, every ridge, every potential threat. Despite his warrior nature, he seemed wary of Mara's quick movements and clever use of the terrain. She was small compared to him, but she had something no amount of size or armor could replace: ingenuity. Humans had a way of seeing possibilities others overlooked. She could adapt, she could survive. Hours passed as they moved from the pod to a sheltered area in the jagged cliffs. Mara scouted ahead, finding a shallow cave that could provide some protection from the planet's storms. She set up makeshift defenses, using broken pieces of the pod and sharp rocks to create barriers. Kor watched, curious, occasionally offering a hand to move heavier objects. At first, Mara had resisted his help, unsure if she could trust him. But slowly she realized that his strength, when combined with her intelligence, could improve their chances of survival. Night fell, and the temperature dropped sharply. Mara started a small fire, careful to hide it from predators she suspected lurked in the shadows. Kor remained seated across from her, observing silently. The alien's eyes reflected the flames, and Mara felt an odd sense of connection. He had come to kill her, yet here they were, trapped together, needing each other to survive. She wondered if he understood humans the way she was beginning to understand him. "Why are you here?" Mara asked cautiously, breaking the silence. The words felt strange in the quiet cave, but she needed to hear them. Kor's eyes narrowed, and he studied her for a long moment. Then, in a voice low and deliberate, he spoke. "Duty brought me. Survival keeps me." His words were simple, yet heavy with meaning. Mara nodded slowly. She understood more than he realized. Duty and survival were forces she knew well. Humans, too, fought for family, for home, for life itself. They shared the cave in silence after that, each lost in thought. Mara's mind wandered to her home, to the people she had left behind, and to the vastness of space she had always loved. Yet she realized something new. Humans were not alone in this galaxy. There were others, being strong, disciplined, and dangerous. But humans had a quality no alien could fully predict: courage, creativity, and the will to fight against impossible odds. The next day, Mara led Kor to a stream she had found during her scouting. Fresh water was scarce, and she carefully filtered it, demonstrating techniques she had learned from years of survival training. Kor watched, curious, and mimicked her actions when he had the chance. It was clumsy at first, but he learned quickly. Mara smiled slightly, realizing that even a warrior could adapt when guided patiently. Humans could teach, and even the strongest beings could leah. And by the time the second night came, Mara and Kor had begun a fragile routine. Mara gathered food, built shelters, and tended to their injuries. Kor, with his strength and precision, helped with heavy lifting, scouting, and defending against unseen threats. They were still enemies in theory, yet necessity had forced them into a partnership. Mara felt a strange sense of pride. Humans could survive anything, not because they were the strongest, but because they never gave up, never stopped thinking, and never lost hope. As they settled beside the fire once more, Mara glanced at Kor. He was silent, his glowing eyes fixed on the flames, yet there was a subtle change in his posture. He was beginning to recognize her courage, her intelligence, and the unyielding human spirit that refused to bow, even in the face of death. Mara met his gaze, and for the first time she felt that perhaps survival was not enough. Perhaps understanding, trust, and even respect could grow between them. The storms raged outside, the planet's dangers waiting for the next moment of weakness. Yet inside that small cave, two very different beings began a quiet truce. They were enemies no longer in action, though the threat of danger still lingered. For the first time, Mara understood that humans were special. Not because they were the strongest, but because they could turn fear into courage, danger into opportunity, and strangers into allies. The morning light broke through the jagged cliffs, casting long shadows across the rocky terrain. Mara woke to the sound of wind whipping through the canyon and the distant calls of strange creatures. She stretched, her muscles sore from the crash and the constant struggle to survive. Across from her, Kor moved silently, inspecting the cave for weaknesses and exits. Even without words, his presence was reassuring. He was dangerous, yes, but he was also reliable, and in this place reliability was rare. Mara gathered supplies for the day. She knew they could not stay in the cave forever. The planet was unpredictable, and the storm patterns would soon make the cliffs unsafe. She packed what little food remained, checked the water supply, and prepared for the long hike across the rocky plains. Kor observed her every move, his posture relaxed but alert. It was a strange thing to have an enemy watching your actions without hostility. Yet Mara felt a flicker of trust growing between them. They moved cautiously across the uneven ground, navigating around sharp rocks and deep crevices. Mara's human instincts guided her, her eyes scanning for danger, her mind calculating every step. Kor followed closely, his movements precise as if he had walked these cliffs 1,000 times. Together, they were a strange pair, a human relying on intuition and creativity, an alien relying on training and discipline. Yet somehow they complemented each other. A sudden rustle in the nearby brush made them both freeze. Mara crouched low, heart pounding, and Kor shifted slightly to block her. From the shadows, a creature burst forth. It was larger than any predator Mara had seen before, with jagged claws and eyes that glowed faintly in the dim light. It charged with terrifying speed, and Mara's first instinct was to run. But Kor stepped forward, his long limbs moving faster than she could follow, intercepting the creature with a precise strike. The predator roared and lunged, but Mara acted quickly, throwing a jagged rock that struck it in the side. The combination of human improvisation and alien strength was enough. The creature retreated, disappearing into the shadows. Mara exhaled slowly, realizing that she and Kor had survived because they had worked together. Survival was not about strength alone. It was about creativity, courage, and trust. As they continued their journey, Mara studied Kor without being obvious. He moved with care, yet there was a subtle grace to his motions. He was lethal, yes, but not reckless. There was intelligence behind every step, a sharp awareness of the environment and the potential dangers. Mara realized that humans had something unique, too, the ability to think differently, to adapt when the unexpected happened. She could see why in some ways Kor respected her already. By mid-afternoon, they reached the edge of a small plateau overlooking a wide valley. The valley was alive with strange plants, some glowing faintly, others moving slowly as if alive. A river snaked through the center, and Mara immediately noticed signs of life: tracks, broken branches, small burrows. They had water, food, and a clearer sense of where to go next. Kor knelt beside her, scanning the valley with those glowing eyes. He made a low sound, almost like approval, and Mara felt a spark of connection. As they descended into the valley, Mara began to teach Kor some of the ways humans adapted to survival. She showed him how to recognize edible plants, how to filter water with simple materials, and how to set basic traps for smaller creatures. Kor watched closely, repeating the actions with careful precision. It was strange and humbling for Mara to see this alien, a being of immense strength, learning from her. Humans may not have had the same power, but they had knowledge, creativity, and the will to use it. That night they made camp near the river. Mara gathered dry branches for a fire, and Kor helped position larger rocks to form a windbreak. They ate quietly, both exhausted but alert. Mara noticed Kor's eyes studying her, and for the first time she felt as if he was not just watching for threats but trying to understand her. She thought about how strange it was to have once tried to kill this being, and now, in the quiet night, they shared food and shelter like allies. The valley was calm, but danger was never far away. Mara lay back, staring at the stars above, thinking of Earth, of home, and of the endless human determination that had brought her here and kept her alive. She realized that survival was only part of the story. Understanding, respect, and even trust could emerge in the strangest of places. Humans had the courage to face the impossible, and the ability to turn enemies into allies when it mattered most. Kor shifted beside her, settling down to rest. Mara watched him for a moment, recognizing the silent acknowledgement that had passed between them. The alien warrior, a creature bred for war, was beginning to see her not as prey, but as a partner. And Mara, despite everything, was beginning to see that even the most fearsome enemies could have honor, intelligence, and perhaps the capacity for change. As the fire crackled softly, Mara felt hope stirring. The planet was harsh, full of unknown dangers, but she was not alone. Humanity's resilience had carried her this far, and with Kor beside her, an alien warrior learning to respect human courage, she knew that whatever challenges awaited, they could face them together. The sun was low in the sky, casting long shadows across the valley. Mara and Kor had been moving cautiously for hours, navigating through thick alien forests and rocky ridges. Mara's muscles ached from constant vigilance, but her mind remained sharp. She had learned that on this planet, danger could appear at any moment. Kor moved beside her silently. His armor scratched and battered from the crash, but his presence brought a strange sense of security. They were no longer strangers or enemies, though neither had forgotten the battle that had begun their story. Suddenly, Mara stopped, holding up her hand. Ahead, a clearing stretched before them, but it was not empty. Strange machines moved slowly across the ground, glinting in the sunlight. They were like no machines Mara had ever seen, sleek, insect-like, with multiple limbs and glowing eyes. They were patrolling, searching for something or someone. Mara's heart raced. She realized with horror that these were not native to the planet. Someone or something had sent them. Kor's glowing eyes narrowed. He made a low sound, a warning. Mara felt the tension in the air. These machines were dangerous, far beyond anything a human alone could handle. Yet she did not panic. She had survived worse situations because humans could think, adapt, and use their environment in ways no machine could predict. Mara pointed to a narrow ravine along the edge of the clearing. "We can sneak through there," she whispered. "It's tight, but it will hide us from sight." Kor nodded, trusting her judgment. Humans had a way of seeing possibilities others overlooked, and Mara's intuition had already saved them more than once. They moved slowly, pressing close to the rocks, avoiding every creak and loose stone. The machines scanned methodically, their glowing eyes sweeping the area, but they did not notice the small human and the alien warrior slipping past them. Once they were safely hidden, Mara allowed herself a brief moment to breathe. She glanced at Kor. "We need to understand who sent these," she said, "and why they want us." Kor's eyes flickered. He did not answer, but Mara could sense his agreement. They had survived together, and now they faced a common enemy. Survival alone was not enough. They needed knowledge, strategy, and courage. Hours passed as they followed a narrow path through the dense forest. The trees were enormous, their leaves shimmering with colors Mara had never seen. Small creatures scuttled in the underbrush, curious but cautious. Mara kept moving, constantly observing, planning, and calculating. Every instinct of a human survivor was in motion. Kor mirrored her movements, silent but attentive, his strength a constant shield. Together they were a balance of intelligence and power, each complementing the other. As night fell, the forest became alive with sounds Mara had never heard before. The machines had stopped their patrol, but she knew danger still lurked. She built a small hidden fire, using smoke to obscure their position. Kor watched, fascinated as she worked. The alien had never needed to improvise in this way before. He was trained for combat, for strategy, for obedience, but not for the unpredictable, adaptable thinking of a human. Mara realized that this was what made humanity special, the ability to turn fear into action, to find solutions in chaos, and to survive when all seemed lost. They ate sparingly, conserving their resources. Mara shared what little food they had, and Kor observed, learning not just survival techniques but human ingenuity. The bond between them grew stronger, built on trust earned through danger and cooperation. Mara could see that Kor no longer viewed her as weak prey. He recognized her courage, her cleverness, and her determination to live no matter the odds. In the quiet moments, Mara spoke softly. "You don't have to follow them blindly," she said. "You can choose your own path. Survival is not just about obeying orders. It's about knowing who you are and who you want to protect." Kor remained silent at first, his glowing eyes fixed on the fire. Then he shifted, a subtle acknowledgement passing between them. The words did not need to be fully understood. The meaning was clear. Trust, respect, and choice were stronger than fear or blind obedience. When the first light of dawn touched the forest, Mara and Kor moved again. They had a plan to gather information about the machines, to understand the threat and find a way to survive against it. Mara felt a growing sense of confidence. Humans had survived against impossible odds throughout history, and now, even on this alien world, she could see the same spirit within herself. Kor, beside her, was learning it too, not from words but from actions, courage, and the human ability to adapt. As they disappeared deeper into the forest, Mara realized something important. Strength was not measured in armor or weapons alone. It was measured in intelligence, determination, and the courage to face the unknown. And for the first time, she felt certain that humanity could not only survive in the galaxy but also inspire respect, even in beings as powerful and disciplined as Kor. They were no longer simply fighting to live. They were beginning to understand each other. And in that understanding lay a new kind of power, one that neither alien nor human could ignore. The forest grew darker as Mara and Kor moved cautiously through the thick underbrush. Strange creatures skittered past them, eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. The machines they had seen before were gone, but Mara could feel their presence, as if some unseen force was still searching for them. Every sound, every movement made her heart race. Humans were not the fastest or the strongest, but they were persistent, and Mara had learned to use patience and cleverness as her greatest weapons. Kor stayed close, his armored form almost blending with the shadows. He moved silently, observing the surroundings with sharp precision. His glowing eyes scanned for danger, but he also watched Mara, noting the way she analyzed each step, the way she calculated risks, and the way she adapted. He had been trained to fight, to obey, and to dominate, but what Mara showed him was something different. Humans did not always overpower with strength. They outsmarted, outlasted, and never gave up. As they climbed a steep ridge, a sudden shriek echoed through the trees. Mara froze, then signaled Kor to stop. Ahead, a patrol of machines emerged, their multi-limbed bodies moving in perfect coordination. Mara's pulse quickened. These were the same machines that had chased them the day before, and now there were more of them. They were faster, more precise, and they would not leave without capturing their target. Mara knew they had to act quickly. She turned to Kor. "We need a plan," she whispered, her voice steady despite the fear gripping her chest. Kor tilted his head, glowing eyes fixed on her. He did not need words. His presence alone gave her the confidence to think clearly. Humans could improvise in the face of danger, and Kor could follow her lead, using strength to complement her strategy. Together they had a chance. Mara scanned the ridge. Jagged rocks and twisted roots offered possibilities. She picked up a thick branch, snapping it in two to create a makeshift spear. Kor understood immediately, grabbing a fallen tree trunk to block one of the narrow paths. Mara moved ahead, carefully positioning traps she had learned to make from scraps, rocks, and sharp branches. Each trap was designed not to kill, but to slow, confuse, and control the machine's movements. The patrol entered the clearing below, their glowing eyes sweeping systematically. Mara signaled to Kor, and he pushed the first trap into motion. A net of vines and rocks fell across one of the machines, tangling its limbs. It roared electronically, trying to free itself. Mara moved quickly, pushing a loose boulder down the slope, forcing the machine into a narrow path where the rest of the traps waited. Her human creativity and quick thinking guided every step, while Core's power and precision ensured each trap worked perfectly. One of the machines tried to break through the line, but Core intercepted it with a swift strike. Sparks flew as metal collided with armor. Mara dodged, ducked, and rolled, using the terrain to her advantage. They were outnumbered but not outmatched. Humans had always thrived in situations like this, adapting, learning, and turning weakness into opportunity. Core seemed to understand that instinctively. He moved beside her, following her lead, his actions synchronized with hers. By the time the last machine had fallen into the trap, both Mara and Core were breathing heavily. Their bodies were scratched, battered, and exhausted, but their spirits were unbroken. Mara looked at Core, and he looked back, his glowing eyes softening slightly. They had survived together not through brute force alone, but through trust, intelligence, and courage. The alien warrior who had once come to kill her now relied on her as much as she relied on him. They moved quickly through the forest after that, knowing that more machines could appear at any moment. Mara's mind was alert, planning the safest path to higher ground where they could rest and survey the valley. Core followed silently, no longer the enemy but a partner who had come to respect human determination. Mara felt a quiet pride. Humans were small in the galaxy, but their minds and hearts made them formidable. Strength was not always measured in power. It was measured in courage, intelligence, and the will to survive against impossible odds. As night fell, they reached a rocky outcrop overlooking the valley. Mara gathered firewood while Core watched the horizon. They were safe for the moment, but both knew the real challenge was still ahead. Mara reflected on how far they had come. What had begun as mortal enemies had evolved into a partnership. Trust had grown from necessity, but it was now reinforced by respect. Humans had once again proven that even in a galaxy filled with danger, intelligence, courage, and determination could turn hopeless situations into survival. The fire crackled softly, and for the first time Mara felt a sense of calm. Core settled beside her, his glowing eyes reflecting the flames. She looked at him, and for a moment there was no fear. No battle, only mutual understanding. The machines were still out there, the threat still looming, but humans had something no alien machine could predict: the ability to adapt, to think creatively, and to never surrender. Mara realized that together they could face anything the universe threw at them. The first light of dawn barely touched the valley when Mara and Core moved cautiously toward the higher cliffs. The events of the past days weighed heavily on both of them. Mara's body ached from exhaustion, and Core's armor bore the scars of countless skirmishes. Yet neither hesitated. The alien faction that had sent the machines was still out there, searching, relentless in its pursuit. Survival alone was no longer enough. They needed a plan to face the threat directly, and Mara's mind worked quickly, thinking like only a human could. They reached the edge of the cliff, overlooking the alien encampment below. Mara studied it carefully. There were several patrols, but she noticed patterns in their movement, small weaknesses in their organization. Core observed silently, his glowing eyes scanning the scene with precision. Mara realized that she had something Core had never been trained for: the ability to see unpredictability and turn it into opportunity. Humans did not rely solely on strength. They relied on ingenuity. "We can take them by surprise," Mara whispered, pointing to a narrow path that led behind the camp. Core inclined his head, trusting her judgment. Together they moved swiftly and quietly, using the rocks and shadows to stay hidden. Mara's heart pounded, but she refused to let fear control her. Humans had survived worse, and she had learned that courage was a choice, not a feeling. Core's presence at her side reinforced that choice. As they approached the camp, Mara noticed a control device at the center, likely coordinating the machines. "If we disable that, the rest will be disorganized," she said. Core's glowing eyes reflected understanding. Mara moved with careful precision, avoiding patrols and making use of small ledges and fallen branches. Core followed, ready to act if brute force became necessary. Their partnership had evolved into a seamless combination of human intelligence and alien power. Mara reached the control device first. She examined it quickly, her mind racing. It was complex but not impossible. She worked swiftly, rerouting power and creating short circuits, all while Core kept watch. Sparks flew and alarms began to blare, but Mara had anticipated it. Core leaped into action, blocking the patrols that rushed toward them, his movements precise and deadly. Mara's traps and clever planning ensured that the enemies were slowed and confused. unable to adapt as quickly as humans could. The skirmish was intense. Mara ducked and rolled, striking where she could, using every bit of terrain to her advantage. Kor moved beside her, strong and unyielding, protecting her from attacks she could not avoid. They fought together, each relying on the other, demonstrating that trust and teamwork could overcome even the most disciplined enemy. Mara felt a surge of pride. Humanity had always been underestimated, but time and again, they had proven that courage, intelligence, and determination could triumph over superior strength. Finally, the control device sparked and died. The machines fell into disarray, some moving in confusion, others shutting down entirely. The remaining enemy warriors were stunned, unsure of what had happened. Mara saw her chance. She signaled Kor, and together they advanced, not with reckless force but with calculated determination. Every movement showcased human ingenuity and alien strength working in harmony. The enemy faction realized too late that they had underestimated their opponents. Kor confronted the leader, a warrior as disciplined and strong as he was, while Mara used the chaos to secure their escape route. The combined human-alien strategy was overwhelming, and the faction began to retreat. Mara's plan had worked not because they were stronger, but because they were smarter, faster, and willing to take risks that the enemy could not predict. When the battle ended, the valley was quiet once more. Mara and Kor stood side by side, breathing heavily, exhausted but victorious. Mara looked at the alien warrior, noticing something she had never seen before. Respect. Genuine respect. He had fought humans before, but he had never encountered courage and intelligence like this. Mara realized that strength alone did not define a warrior. Humanity's unique qualities, the ability to adapt, to think, to never give up, could shape the course of events even against overwhelming odds. Kor approached her slowly and extended a hand. Mara hesitated only briefly before taking it. The gesture was simple, yet it carried immense meaning. Two beings, once enemies, now stood as allies. The trust between them was not born from convenience, but from shared struggle, courage, and understanding. Mara felt a quiet pride in her species. Humans had survived countless dangers, faced impossible odds, and still stood strong, proving that the human spirit was not to be underestimated. As the sun climbed higher, Mara and Kor moved away from the valley. The danger was not entirely gone, but they had faced it together and prevailed. Mara knew that the challenges ahead would be difficult, yet she felt certain that humans had something extraordinary. They could endure, adapt, and inspire respect even in the most unlikely allies. Kor had learned it firsthand, and Mara knew that their journey together was far from over. For the first time in days, Mara allowed herself a moment of calm. Humans had survived again, not by power alone, but by courage, intelligence, and heart. The galaxy was vast and full of dangers, yet she felt ready to face whatever came next. With Kor beside her, she knew that humanity's spirit could turn even the deadliest enemies into partners, and that the human spark, resilient, clever, and determined, would shine brightly wherever they went. The valley was quiet now, the threat of the alien faction finally gone. Mara and Kor stood on a ridge looking out over the landscape that had tested them in every way. The storms, the predators, and the machines had challenged their strength, courage, and wits, yet they had survived. Mara felt a deep sense of relief, but also an unfamiliar calm. She had expected fear, tension, and uncertainty, yet beside her, Kor remained steady, a silent testament to the bond they had built. Mara looked at him, noticing how his posture had softened. The alien warrior who had once come to kill her now walked beside her, not as an enemy, but as a companion. Kor had learned from her, not just how to survive, but the meaning of trust, respect, and courage beyond orders and duty. Mara smiled faintly. Humans had always been underestimated, yet time and again their ingenuity and spirit proved that strength was not just physical. They began descending toward a river that wound through the valley. The water was clear and cold, and Mara knelt to drink. Kor followed, mimicking her actions without hesitation. The simplicity of the moment was comforting. Mara realized how much they had both changed. What had begun as a desperate fight for survival had evolved into mutual understanding. They had learned from each other, adapted together, and survived against odds that no human or alien had expected. As they walked, Mara spoke softly. "We made it," she said, more to herself than to Kor. "We survived everything this planet threw at us, and somehow we did it together." Kor's glowing eyes met hers, and Mara could see recognition in his gaze. He had seen human courage firsthand, and he understood that survival was only part of what made them remarkable. Their minds, their hearts, and their determination were just as powerful as any weapon or armor. The sun climbed higher, casting warm light across the rocky cliffs. Mara led Kor to a small plateau where they could rest. They were both tired, sore, and hungry, yet neither felt defeated. Mara had learned that endurance was as much about spirit as it was about body. Kor, too, had learned that strength alone could not win every battle. Sometimes it took trust, cleverness, and a willingness to understand others. For a long while, they simply rested, watching the valley below. Mara thought about Earth, about her home and family, and the countless humans who had survived impossible challenges throughout history. She realized that this was why humanity endured. The human spirit was not measured by muscle or weapons, but by courage, adaptability, and the willingness to act even when fear threatened to overwhelm. Kor had seen this spirit in her, and in doing so had begun to understand it himself. The wind shifted, carrying the faint scent of flowers and wet earth. Mara reached out instinctively, and Kor mirrored her movement. Their hands met, a simple gesture, yet filled with significance. The alien warrior's hand was larger, warmer than she expected, and for the first time there was no tension, no threat. It was a quiet acknowledgement of what they had survived together. A bond formed in fire, fear, and trust. Mara felt a sense of completion she had not known she could experience in the middle of a hostile world. They remained like that for some time, watching the horizon, letting the silence speak for them. Mara realized that Kor had changed. He was still a warrior, still disciplined and powerful, but he had learned the value of cooperation, empathy, and respect. And she had learned something too, that humans could inspire change even in beings who seemed completely different. Their partnership was proof of a truth that Mara had always believed. Courage, intelligence, and the willingness to fight for life could turn even enemies into allies. As evening approached, Mara and Kor began making their way back to the pod, planning their next move. The planet was still dangerous, but they no longer felt powerless. Mara's mind was alert, thinking of strategies and routes, while Kor's strength ensured they could handle any sudden challenge. Together, they were stronger than either had been alone. The bond forged in the fires of survival had become something enduring, a partnership built on trust, courage, and mutual respect. When they finally reached the pod, Mara paused, looking at Kor once more. "We made it through," she said softly. "Not because we were the strongest, but because we never gave up." Kor inclined his head, and for a moment there was no need for words. The hand-in-hand gesture was enough. They had survived the impossible, learned from each other, and proven that even in the cold expanse of the galaxy, humans could shine. The stars began to appear overhead as night fell. Mara looked up and felt hope swelling in her chest. Humanity had survived again, not because of power alone, but because of courage, intelligence, and heart. And now Kor had learned it too. The alien warrior who had once tried to kill her now rested with her hand in his, a living testament to what humans could inspire. Mara smiled. The galaxy was vast, full of danger and unknowns, but one truth remained certain. The human spirit could endure, adapt, and turn even the fiercest enemy into a trusted companion.